Hello, welcome to another in my series of videos on Realmworks. Today I'm going to be showing you one of the free content packages that was just released by Loanworks Development. This is the Isle of Kandril, which is a combined setting and adventure package. I'm going to be concentrating mostly on the setting. The adventure is a level 8 module that is kind of a guided tour of the setting. And I assume that we all know how to run a module. And since it's intended for level 8 characters, it's probably going to be a relatively limited utility. The setting, on the other hand, is fairly interesting. So when you load it in, this is what you're confronted with, the getting started thing. So let's go over here. This is, of course, the story source, which is, basically just an explanation of what you got and all of the things that link to it, and all the content links. So you get 2 GM synopsises and 2 player synopsises. One each for the setting and one each for the adventure. The adventure is called Kraken King Adventure, and the setting is, of course, called the Isle of Kandril. The Isle of Kandril setting, GM synopsis, includes the basics of the setting, and then actually, for anyone who's new to Realmworks, some basics on using Realmworks. Which, if you're new to Realmworks, there's some interesting, not terribly earth-shaking, but it will be helpful to someone using this. It's actually not a bad tutorial in here. The player synopsis, it's mostly just a set of links to various locations and important people and stuff. Presumably, as stuff is revealed, the GM can come in here and reveal stuff, and then they can find it. I kind of think there are more useful things to do with a player synopsis than this, but I think this will be something that evolves as time goes on. The various images topic is just the cover. Which is nothing particularly earth-shaking. There are 400 topics in this. It's a 50-odd meg download, just so you know. Moving on, there are this small number of time eras and historical events, incidents, covering the history of the island, going all the way back here 100,000 years. Up to 2 years ago. That covers the history of the island in rough strokes. But it lets you sets up the politics of the island and the history of the island for you. This is the storyline of the adventure. All the scenes of the adventure are here. There's also a storyboard of the adventure here, which you can easily follow. Now we get into the meat of the setting. The cast list for all of the different locations and all the different groups are segregated here under people. Also, here is the Pantheon of the setting, which is not particularly expansive, but should be a decent starting point for anyone looking to have this as their, basic setting. The main city in the setting is Agenon. I have no idea what the pronunciation is supposed to be, but that's how I'm going to say it. AjinaN, and it has actually two cast lists. There's the main cast and then an extras cast. I'm not really sure why they chose to separate them. I certainly don't see any need to, but they did. There's a Creatures of Kandril, which are just creatures that you might encounter over land, which are separated out. I also noticed that there are some creatures that are down here in the places, but only a few. So clearly there's a few kinks to be worked out in this. But most of the creatures that you will encounter that are NPCs that you might interact with are here in this cast list. The historical cast seems to be people who are dead. So these are just historical figures. Haraga is another city, so these are people you could encounter in in a lesser city, and Runeport is the third city, so these are people you might encounter there. Now you get into groups, and these are groups important in Agenon, and these are historical groups, which I assume are no longer around or no longer important, and then groups in Haraga, and then Kandril Y groups, outside groups, and Runeport groups. And now we get into places. And here we finally get, well, not finally, here we get into where things get to more or less how people run games. The Isle of Kandril is the first place where we get into a navigation map. And it's a really pretty good map. Using it for navigation is going to be a little tricky because its dimensions aren't really ideal. But there's nothing impossible about it. The city of Agenon, which is probably the biggest location, easy enough to get to. Agenon is the only city with its own smart map. The other two cities, which I'll get to in a moment, don't have a smart map. This one does. So you should be aware of this. This is the map. This is the city where you're supposed to basically base your party in if you use this as your setting. Agenon is pretty well detailed. There's some articles about things in Agenon, and then there's some neighborhoods and fairly extensive listings on the community, including sewers and just everything you'd want to know about it. And the other two cities, Haraga, you get this article and some sub-articles, subtopics, but no map. You just get a picture. And Runeport is the same way. You get the main topic, you get some subtopics, which detail a great deal about the city, but you get no map. So you'll have to generate your own map if you want your adventurers to use those as their home bases, or if you need them, if you need those maps. Back to the island itself, there are a number of locations beyond the three cities detailed. Many of these are clearly possible adventure locations. There are many ruins scattered all over the island. There's a dragon-infested ruined city. A green dragon and her brood, which I find particularly amusing. The idea of trying to cross an entire plain infested by green dragons just kind of amuses me. However, that's about all the detail you get of this. Is there's a bunch of green dragons, and you get the stat block of the main one. That's all you get is you don't even get her stat block, I guess. But, you know, she's a, ancient green dragon. You can just generate that out of Hero Lab pretty easily. So, there is one dungeon location that is generated as part of the adventure. This is Fort Underlord, which is part of the adventure. And I'm not going to spoil it because, that's part of the adventure and, players might be looking. So, I'll leave that to the GMs. The other locations, at most you get a picture. Sometimes you don't even get a picture. Most of the time you do, though. Well, I don't even know about most. Sometimes you get a picture. You do at least get a fairly good description of most of these. And sometimes you do get a picture. And for free content, there's a lot here. There's 400 odd topics, if I haven't mentioned that before. So that's it's a pretty good sized realm for something they gave us for free. That's the dungeon, and I don't want everyone to be able to see it. Wouldn't be nice. So you get some art. You certainly get at least the beginning of some other areas to explore. There certainly is the beginning of a setting here for any level of adventure you want to put here. There's some plot ideas if you need ideas for to flesh out the setting, which I don't think anyone will have any trouble with. The setting is well developed. There's political intrigue, there's monsters, there's ruins to explore. I mean, for free, there's plenty here. It's just a matter of you're going to have to do some work beyond the one adventure. There's some, artifacts. You get a fair amount of that. On the mechanics side, you get a relative handful. You get a couple of feats that are important to the setting. You get a potion. You get some poisons. You get some hazards. You get some monsters, which are mostly a couple which are just variants on existing monsters, and some are really kind of unique. And you get some traps, which I assume, I haven't gone through the adventure that closely. I assume they're all in the adventure somewhere. But you get 5 traps. Whether they're all used somewhere or not, I just don't know yet. But I assume they are. But there they are. The 5 traps. They're all laid out in pretty standard Pathfinder format. But they're also all laid out for, and they're all pretty low. CR2 traps, CR3 traps. You're going to send a CR5 trap? CR3 trap? I mean, level 8 characters? I hope they're not running into a CR3 trap or a CR2 trap. What's the point? DC 20 perception, DC 20 disable? I mean, you just have your rogue would just be laughing at you. So I hope these aren't really in that dungeon. I mean, that would just make it just kind of laughable. One thing you may find annoying, I certainly did when I was looking through this, and this brings up a point that I will be mentioning over at LWD eventually. They did not turn off showing the alternative names. The true names, true names you can't turn off, but they didn't turn off showing alternative names in the navigation. So, like here, Incanter's Mark is the true name. But all of these names are in the navigation somewhere, as you can see here, some of them. In fact, you can see all of them, which clutters up the navigation. I'm not going to say how a GM would normally want this, but I really doubt a GM is going to want all this stuff in navigation. I mean, in my experience, GMs want their navigation as clean as possible, not full of, I mean, if these are linked somewhere, then I'll follow a link and find it. I don't need to find it in navigation by some other name. The you'll see this a few places where things have alternate names, and it just makes the navigation longer than it needs to be. Like here, all these minor orc tribes, you know, the Rime Peaks inhabitants. They're just one document, minor orc tribes. All these tribes are all in nav when it's just one topic. They're all the same topic. They're all under the exact same containing topic, so it's not like they're in different places. They can't be in the different places. They're just one thing. So this just makes the table of content, you know, the navigation longer for no gain. And going through all of these topics and turning this off over and over and over and over and over again is going to be annoying. So hopefully there'll be a global switch that says turn all this off when you import content, because I just certainly don't want it this way. Like here, this scene has 2 names. I mean, or 3 names. I mean, who gives a scene multiple names? I mean, it's a scene in an adventure. Okay, well, other than that, which is a really minor quibble, just, you know, one of those things about organization that, I've got a thing about organization. It looks like a really great starting point for a setting if you're looking for a starting point for a setting. Now, if you're not looking for a starting point for a setting, if you're looking for an adventure, is the adventure good? I can't say. I've looked at it. An 8th level adventure, I'm not really sure if it's good or not. It looks playable. I haven't really gone through it every single encounter and figured out if they're all good or bad or not. But the overall story arc looks acceptable, and you're getting it for free, so you should expect to do some work with it to make it good. Now, are there elements you can take from this to improve your own campaign setting? This is what I looked at it for, because I don't need an island of this sort for my setting, and I certainly don't need this big of chunk added to my campaign. There are pieces I could use, but like, I don't know. It's pretty integrated, so I'm not sure if there's going to be anything I could take. Maybe I could take the city. Maybe I could take some elements from the city. I'm not sure. There's some NPCs I certainly could take if I really wanted to. There's nothing in any of this that's all that stand out. None of this stuff has, like, these are just pretty generic locations. There's nothing here that would make me go, oh, I really want to load this whole thing in just to grab a few of these locations. And in some cases, even that, some of these places are pretty well linked in with some of these relationships and stuff. So getting them and then cutting out the rest of this, like I said, 400 odd topics, be a little bit of work. But again, that might be it's according to how much of this you want. If you want a significant amount of it, or if you want, especially if you want a lot of it, it might be for you. I think that you could, with a certain amount of effort, use this as a base for an entire campaign. It's a big island. You would have to, start off. You'd have to build your own first level adventures, low level adventures, because remember the adventure that comes with it is 8th level. But there's nothing saying you can't build a 1st through 7th level adventure. Now you'd have to adapt even the 8th level adventure. It's intended for 8th level characters who just arrived on the island. But there's nothing there that's impossible. And there's certainly plenty of room to explore. It's a big place. And there's political intrigue, there's ruins, I just think you will have things to do, or at least I have ideas about using it. And it is, as an island, it should be able to drop into most Pathfinder-ish campaign worlds. So, if you're looking for a campaign setting, you should at least give it some thought. I mean, here it is. You've got the maps. You've got all the NPCs. It's a pretty big addition, like you've seen it. Even in a completely empty realm, it did affect load times, as you just saw. I mean, it takes a little while to load things. 400 topics was affecting my load time. So you have to take that into account. That's why I didn't load it into my main realm. I mean, you add that 400 to my 1,000 odd, and I don't even want to know. So overall, is this, this does show what Lone Wolf thinks a professional realm should look like, which gives us some ideas. It gives us some things to work with. It gives us, we can take from this if there's anything you want to take from it. There's a fully fleshed out city. There's a couple of cities that are a little less fleshed out. There's a full dungeon. There's some other things that you at least have some ideas to work from. There's a lot of NPCs. There's a full Pantheon. I think, especially any GM who's just getting started, this might be something you might at least want to consider as a starting point. All right. I rambled on long enough. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. If this content was useful to you, please like this video. If all of my videos are useful to you, please subscribe. It helps me become more visible, and that helps me get other people to watch my videos. Thank you, and have a good day.